Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Pod Save Chocolate. My name is Clay Gordon. I'm your host and your moderator. I'm also the creator and the publisher of thechocolatelife.com. Before we get stuck in today's topic, which is World Chocolate Day, as well as the July news and AMA Ask Me Anything, what I want to do is remind everybody that this episode of Pod Save Chocolate, like every episode of Pod Save Chocolate, is supported by members of the Chocolate Life. And if what you do is you go over to thechocolatelife.com right now, this is the homepage. You can go click on the button up here, the green button. I'm logged in, so it says account. But if you are not currently a member, you can create an account, a free account. And then you'll be able to access special members only content like the July 2024 member newsletter, right? And with that out of the way, today's topic is World Chocolate Day and also the July news and member AMA or watcher AMA. So if you have any question about cocoa or chocolate that you'd like to get asked and answered, please just put it into the comments. And also I like to know where people are connecting from in the world. So in the comments, let me know where in the world you're connecting from. Not LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, but physically, geographically, where in the world you're connecting from. And this is the post for today's episode of Pod Save Chocolate. I do a post like this for every single episode, and it contains links and information and the links to resources, and so that you don't have to follow along. You don't have to worry about catching URLs or anything like that. Now, I have not embedded all of the links that I'm going to talk about today in today's post, but I will do them after the fact, right? But we'll see what it is that I get covered today, because there's lots of interesting stuff to cover. So before we do get into the topic about sort of the history of World Chocolate Day, let's go take a look at what cocoa is doing. So right now, the cash price is at around $7,700 a metric ton. If we look over here to the right of this chart, I'll put the link to this chart in the post, that the 52-week high is 12,000 a metric ton, and the 52-week low is 3,000 a metric ton. But what we want to do when we start looking at these kinds of charts is go take a look at the volatility in the marketplace, because the continued volatility is making it difficult for people to make very, very specific buying decisions. And so when we see this bang, 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 back up and forth, $100 a ton every day, $200 a ton or more every day, what it suggests is there's still a mismatch in the marketplace. Now, I had a talk with someone recently about what's going on here. We saw the price has gone down. It went back up to $10,000 a metric ton. It's back up to 7,700. What it suggests is, let's go back down to 7,700. What it suggests is that there is some confidence in the mid-harvest in terms of reaching regular levels of productivity. But what we've got here, which is different from the run-up in April, where it went up to $12,000 a metric ton, is that for one reason or another, speculators are not seeing an opportunity in the marketplace. And so while the prices are jumping around all over the place, it doesn't look like the speculators saying there's a whole lot of money that we're going to be able to get by crashing into the marketplace, which I think is a good sign. But I don't necessarily know that we've still yet addressed any of the fundamental underlying issues associated with the run-up in cocoa prices, which have to do with historic lack of investment in farms and farmers, climate change, the fact that there was a weather event, El Nino, this year, which affected things, and then we still have a bunch of related issues, and we'll talk about some of those when we get to a lot of the posts that I wanted to talk about today. So the first thing is just a little plug. I put together a chocolate calendar like this. So it's a holiday and events calendar, and you can go to a particular month. We got the month of July. We see that July 7th, today is Friday, July 5th. So in 2 days is World Chocolate Day. And what's going on here? We have the Australian Chocolate Festival is happening on the 7th. So this is a bean to bar festival that's happening in Melbourne. And I took a look at the list of exhibitors, and it's a pretty good representation of where the this craft or specialty bean to bar chocolate movement is in Australia at the moment. So I, here I am in Arizona, and part of me says, I wish I was able to be in Melbourne. I have family there, and it would be great to see them and to see what's going on, and taste firsthand what's going on. But if you're in Australia and you're in the Melbourne area and you're looking for something to do on Sunday, right, the Australian Chocolate Festival is a great idea, something to go and consider. We've also got, the 20, I didn't update this. There's a lot to keep track of here. The Salon del Cacao y Chocolate is I think either still happening or just completed in Peru. That's something that happens every July. So here coming on, we've got National Ice Cream Day here in the United States, National Chocolate Wafer Day. These two things happened in the last week. We have a National Chocolate with Almonds Day, International Leamington Day. For you Australians, you'll know what a Leamington is. I noticed there's something I need to fix in that. We have National Peanut Butter and Chocolate Day later this month, as well as National Hot Fudge Sundae Day and National Milk Chocolate Day. All of those things are happening in the month of July. And you can find all of these things and festivals and links to holidays for the rest of the year. And if you have something that you would like to add to this in the member discussion, if you're a member, you can put it into the comments and you can let me know if you think that there's a holiday or some other event that you think should be on this list. And you'll see that what we've done is people have made specific recommendations and I have added them to the list. So there's that. So World Chocolate Day is set for July 7th, this coming Sunday. And one of the first questions to ask about World Chocolate Day is why World Chocolate Day? And number two, once we get past the why World Chocolate Day, the question is who World Chocolate Day? Right. So, if you've watched any of these episodes about news in the past, you'll notice that I like to use a search engine which provides some sort of AI generated contextual analysis of the results. And I will use this in addition to just straight in search engines like DuckDuckGo and Google. And the reason why is that it's doing some inferential reasoning and presenting summaries based upon this inferential reasoning. And this provides me, I have found that this provides me a faster way to get at sources of information for things rather than the search engine going through an algorithm and ranking everything. And then I have to go through each one of these resources that the search engine produces one at a time to determine what is important to me. And so I use one called Perplexity. And one of the reasons why I use Perplexity is I use a browser called Arc, A-R-C, and Arc supports Perplexity as a native search engine, as a default native search engine. And I could use Google or DuckDuckGo, but I actually have a link to DuckDuckGo up here in my bookmark favorites in Arc. So World Chocolate Day, the first year in which it was officially celebrated was 2009. The date July 7th was chosen, apparently, because that is the date that is historically attributed to chocolate, cocoa, chocolate, first arriving in Europe. So in the year 1550. Now, unfortunately, there is actually not 100% historical evidence that July 7th, 1550 was the date on which, right, cocoa or chocolate arrived in Europe. And so the summary here, it gives this, so Perplexity gives me a summary why it talks about common types of chocolate. I don't know. It will also give people ideas for how to celebrate World Chocolate Day, which suggests an avenue of research that I could do by asking questions. And then Perplexity also asks a bunch of follow-up questions or presents a bunch of follow-up questions. So I could say, or I can ask it, how did chocolate first come to Europe? And what it will do is it will generate a little summary of that. And if I go back up here, there's a link to World Chocolate Day on Wikipedia. So I can go to the Wikipedia entry, excuse me, for World Chocolate Day. And what you learn is that Wikipedia, which is often just insanely detailed about history of stuff, basically says it's an annual celebration and we don't know why. And one of the things you learn here is that unlike something like International Chocolate Day, which is set for September 13th, International Chocolate Day was created by the US National Confectioners Association, and September 13th was chosen because it's also Milton Hershey's birthday. And so having International Chocolate Day on Milton Hershey's birthday as a sort of remembrance or celebration of Milton Hershey and his contribution, it makes a little bit of sense, right? And so it also makes sense that we would think about, okay, when did chocolate arrive in Europe as a day to celebrate? Some people might say it's not really a date to celebrate because of historical connections with slavery and things like that. But it's also really important to know is that there is no indication here that there is any individual or group, any organization that's actually behind the creation of World Chocolate Day. And so we can go through, and now it's a choice, we're going to go look through the references. And if we start looking through the references, we just find that there's not much there, right? And so, I mean, we talk about 2009. I mean, I first got into chocolate in 2001. My book was Discover Chocolate was published in 2007. So all of the sort of whatever ever happening to coalesce around 2007, around World Chocolate Day in 2009, is happening, as I'm doing my work, and following up on the publication of my book. And I'm not aware really of any of it in my memory. So that's a really, really strange aspect of the day. It's just it didn't come to my attention until much more recently. But if we start looking through a bunch of these resources, right? So we find a whole lot of links to other things that you can do some research on. And this is what's fun for me, right? Number one is following links to interesting resources to see if I can learn tidbits, and then trying to understand a little bit about who these sources are as well. So we find here in this article by First Post, what's fun about it, or what's interesting about it, is we get an interesting set of resources. So we have this link to a report on the BBC about chocolate history in general. We find a journal article about nature, ecology, and evolution, which says that the plant might have been used at least 15,000 years earlier than previously thought, right? And so we've got a report in the Hindustan Times. And one of the things that really struck me as I'm going and looking through the links associated with World Chocolate Day is the huge percentage of them which are from Indian sources in India, and which is really interesting. So why is an article about World Chocolate Day looking at the etymology of the word chocolate, right, from the Hindustan Times as opposed to some other sources? And so this is really, really, interesting to me as an author, as a communicator, where the sources come from. It could be that the author of this article is from India. I don't know the answer to that question. We also have, an article that was published by Cadbury and one from Wired magazine. And so it's just, again, it's just really, really interesting to me. And the final one from the Canberra Times. So finding these links. So an exploration of World Chocolate Day and the origin of World Chocolate Day became an entry point to a whole lot of exploration and discovery about related topics. So we could look about the topic, when was chocolate first introduced in Europe? We get stories around Christopher Columbus being the first European to report seeing cocoa in 1502, 1504 on the fourth voyage. So there's some history here. If you don't use Perplexity, I can't necessarily give you all these links. Maybe I can do a screenshot of it. But then we have a little bit of history about how chocolate spread through Europe. So if you're looking for a little bit of historical context, you've got these, and there are little footnotes beside each one, and you can go take a look at the footnotes in this little sidebar here, and they provide just this really, really wonderful way to go and explore, in addition to these follow-up questions, right? So if we were to go to Wikipedia, which is on one of the resource lists, it's also doesn't really talk about the entry of chocolate into Europe. All right, until you get down into here. But we've got this history of chocolate in Europe, right, which is separate from this thread in Spain. And now what we've got is 3 or 4 different threads which we can read. They're not necessarily independent sources, but Wikipedia especially, you can go follow all the citations and figure out what you believe and what you don't believe. And this citations and links to primary sources is really, really important, as we will follow, or we will discuss, and I have discussed on a number of occasions. So this is for something called Knox, Tennessee Today. Not entirely sure why this is cited as a resource, but 7 top questions about World Chocolate Day. No, 7 top questions about chocolate, right? So this is 7 top questions about chocolate, not 7 top questions about World Chocolate Day. I was hoping this would be a discussion of top questions about World Chocolate Day. It's not. It looks like this is an AI generated image. I'm just looking at a strawberry and a pool of chocolate against the ocean, and it's a rather bizarre image. So top questions, and this is where you find out they're not talking about World Chocolate Day. What can 100% chocolate be used for? Answer: pair with cheese. Huh. That's an interesting answer. I'm wondering at this point if there might be, given that this looks like it might be an AI generated image, am I using some large language model to help me generate some of these points? It really isn't, they're pointing out, isn't every day really chocolate day? So why do we have World Chocolate Day wasn't one of the questions, right? But I wondered why some might suggest it. So there's some history there. 100% chocolate. What is chocolate most used for? Cakes, puddings, mousse, brownies, and chocolate chip cookies. Right? Is chocolate a food or a drug? Is it healthy? Notice there's a link here. And so we can go follow and we go take a look at Johns Hopkins, right, about the benefits of chocolate eating. And it's interesting. There's an interesting connection here about the way you think about chocolate. So if you think about chocolate as a guilty pleasure, right, as opposed to thinking about it as something that is sort of more like a joyful celebration, that attitude towards chocolate is actually an indicator of, for among other things, perhaps other unhealthy eating behaviors, questions about body image. And so if you are interested in that, this is a really interesting avenue that I didn't think that my exploration of World Chocolate Day would take me down. Another thing that you might want to do, and again, you never know where this is going to come and why it's another site from India. This is the Deccan Times or the Deccan Herald. It's a list of 5 documentaries that you might want to watch. The first one of which is The Dark Side of Chocolate. And there are a number of other documentaries which have been put together by Mickey Mastrati as the producer. Mickey's been a guest on the Pod Safe Chocolate in the past, and I've had one of the hosts of these documentaries, Terry Collingsworth, who is at International Rights Advocates, also as a guest on Pod Safe Chocolate. And so if you are interested in learning more about chocolate, you can find The Dark Side of Chocolate. And I'll see if there are YouTube links that I can put in for The Dark Side of Chocolate and the other these other films. One is called Chocolate Perfection. And it's about a very, very famous French chocolatier. They say Michael Roux. I believe it's Michel Roux, not Michael Roux. So you can find out the work that he does. Then Semi-Sweet, A Life in Chocolate, Setting the Bar, Craft Chocolate Origin Story. Now, I had never heard of this one. As somebody who's been involved in, bean to bar chocolate, specialty chocolate, craft chocolate for a long time, I was not familiar with a craft chocolate origin story. So that's something I'm going to go and research and see if I can find a way to see it myself. Um, so again, this general explanation, give myself just a few minutes, 10 or 15 minutes, to go and follow down the path of World Chocolate Day, provides a whole lot of interesting things. Now, here is something that I thought was really, really cool. I thought I put this in my cache, is that the city of Geneva offers something called a Choco Pass. Now, what they're doing is they're suggesting that you celebrate World Chocolate Day with the Choco Pass. And what it is that it's a pass that you pay for. It's about 30 euros, I believe, per adult. And what you do is you get a list. Of seven chocolatiers in Geneva, and you can present your pass. There's a little map here. You can present your pass at any one of these chocolatiers, and you'll get a tasting plates, which I think is a really, really cool idea. And I think it's actually something that any city tourism agency should take a look at implementing as a way of driving business to retail locations in their city from tourists. And so here is the list of some of the chocolatiers for which um, um, you can go into their shops and you can select the tasting plate. And one of the things that's great about this is you buy it. It's good for 1 year from the first tasting, which is also really, really cool. You don't need to go in one day. You don't necessarily need to do them all in one visit. You can go and spread this over time if for one reason your travel takes you to Geneva. But I can imagine something like this in Genoa. I can imagine something like this in London, something like this in Paris would be very, very cool. And so I was really excited to find this. I haven't been in Geneva since forever, but I think that the idea of this chocolate pass is really one that is a great idea, and that other people might be, or other tourism agencies. I mean, what would a Choco Pass look like for New York City, for example? Something to consider. And so if you are in a city where there is a lot of chocolate and you're looking to drive visits, maybe connect with the local tourism agency, right? And see if you can put together a Choco Pass with you and some of your fellow chocolatiers in the city. I think it's a great idea to drive that kind of stuff. To drive traffic, to drive business. So I think it's really, really cool idea. And speaking of driving business, one city where this could happen is Dallas. And this was in my email this morning. So if you're interested in attending the Dallas Chocolate Festival as a participant, tickets are on sale. And I'm going to put the link to this into the post, but there is a VIP night, individual experiences, and then a general admission to the festival. So here are where you can buy tickets to the Dallas Chocolate Festival. We've already talked about the Australian Chocolate Festival, so it's this coming Sunday. So it's already Saturday in Australia for where I am. But if you want to attend, the link to this will be in the post. And then this is one that I just found out about this morning, going through my news feed, is that there is something called the World Chocolate Fair, which happens in the Philippines, which I wasn't familiar with. It's co-organized by Auro Chocolate, and the venue is a place called Es Maison, which is a mall in Manila. So it's a multi-day festival. I think it runs from the 3rd to the 7th, so it runs through World Chocolate Day. There is free admission, and then there's a bunch of things that you can do. I'll put a link to this post again into the post for today's episode. If you're in Manila and you don't know about this, and you're interested in attending one or more festivals this weekend, whether you're in Australia or whether you're in the Philippines. Again, right? I never really know where an exploration of the news or an exploration of an event like World Chocolate Day is gonna take me, right? And so I've gone through all of the things which are sort of directly associated with World Chocolate Day, which is It first was founded in 2009. There's no indication that there's an individual or an organization which is behind the founding of World Chocolate Day. It just sort of organically, spontaneously came together around the day on which most people believe that chocolate first arrived in the old world, or at least cacao arrived in the old world. Right? But in the process of doing all that, I learned a whole bunch of other things. And that's where I'm going to do the reset for the second half of today's episode. So, you're watching Pod Save Chocolate. My name is Clay Gordon. I'm your host. This episode of Pod Save Chocolate, like every episode, is supported by members of thechocolatelife.com. If you're not a member, you can go to the Chocolate Life, join, and support what it is that I do. Always a free membership tier. There are special members-only content. And if you go to a premium tier, there are also consulting and other services which are available to members, which are not available to non-members. So go there and support the work we're doing. If you're watching on YouTube, please give this video a thumbs up if you like it. Right, comment, share with friends, grow the Chocolate Life and Pod Safe Chocolate family. Would be greatly appreciated. Thank you very much. Right, and with that, I want to go into some of the other things that I learned. I mean, the news section of what it is that I'm doing of today's episode. And what I also want to say is that this is an AMA session. So go into the chat, whether it's the live chat on YouTube or the comment section on Facebook or LinkedIn, and ask a question, or just let me know where in the world you're connecting from. Always interested in knowing where people are watching. And I can get the shout out up on screen and acknowledge the fact that you're watching today. And then if you have a question or comment, I'll get that up on screen and I'll try to answer it as well today, right? So with that said, bit of news. There's this article for some reason in the Irish Examiner. I have no idea why it's in the Irish Examiner. It showed up yesterday, but scientists have discovered a new plant species that could lead to climate-proof chocolate. And so not a new, but several new plant species. And the plant species they're particularly talking about are a subspecies, right, or species within the family, which is called Herania, right? And so there are 3 new species of Herania. And I go, wow, man, Herania, I know the name Herania. Somehow I think Herania is really, really closely related to Theobroma. And so a quick look at Wikipedia says that Herania is a genus of flowering plants in the family Malvaceae, and it's very, very closely related to Theobroma genus. That was the word I was looking for, which includes tea cacao. So as of 1999, there were about 17. Well, there are 17 listed here. And we go back to the article and we see that the 3 new species, the 3 new species of Herania, turn out not to be on this list. So this list needs to be updated. And so what they're saying is that there are new species of a plant which are closely related to Theobroma cacao. And the scientists believe, and these scientists were at the University College of Cork, which is why the connection to Ireland, right? Brazil's São Paulo University, and the New York Botanical Garden. So they have discovered these 3 new species, right? Or species that are new since 1999. And they believe that there are genetics within these 3 new species which might be able to be bred into. So this might be conventional breeding, or it could be genetically inserted, so techniques, which can be used to make Theobroma cacao more climate resistant. So interesting bit of research that's coming up that says that there may be a way to take Theobroma cacao trees and make them more resistant to climate change. Now, this research is likely to take years, if not decades, but it's worthwhile knowing that closely related plant species. And so if you've never taken a look at what does Herania look like, there are images. So this is one of the reasons why I like using Perplexity, is there's this whole set of images which are related in a nice little browser. We can find out how it's related. We can find the range over which it grows. And then I asked it, what is the relationship between Theobroma and Harania? Not as something you're not going to really be able to ask quite as effectively on Google or DuckDuckGo. So, which is one of the reasons why I use this AI engine. And it's really, really interesting what we find out about the relationship between the two. And then one of the follow-up questions that they represented to me is after the original results is, what are the practical applications of this? I mean, this is for me one of the most helpful uses of AI, right? Is it can go and pull out of these sources a bunch of questions that I wouldn't know how to ask and present them to me in a way that it knows it already has potential answers to, right? And then there are links to the sources which allow me to go and explore. Really helpful. But number one, when we think about the link to Theobroma and Harania, number one, crop improvement. Okay, that's one of the potential benefits. Disease resistance, right? Approaches to conservation strategies, adaptation to climate change, right there, right? Biodiversity management, taxonomic revision. I mean, so this is another challenge that's going on, is that the research into species which are related to Theobroma cacao, Harania is one of them, suggests that they may need to revise the taxonomy and place them in new places or subdivide in new ways. And people may know that this has already happened. Like 15 years ago, the cacao was thought to be in Strasulaceae, which is another family, and it got moved into Malvaceae. So these taxonomic revisions happen all the time, and you need to stay on top of them. But this is one of the things that's going on right now. And then we're looking at biogeography, and then how does this new species affect product development? So insights into the genetic makeup and relationships of plants could potentially lead to the development of new flavors and new properties, right? Which could be very interesting. So I will put links to some of these topics in the post today. I will definitely do this link to Harania and the link to Theobroma, and you'll be able to follow this if it's of interest to you. Unfortunately, there's not a whole lot of, there are some references, but there aren't a whole lot of references. And so it's going to be a little more challenging. If you're not already using Perplexity, you can sign up for a free account. And then you can go and find these things yourself. Could be very interesting. So just wanted to let you know. This is, I'm really excited that the research is being done. I am always wondering about how a genetically modified in the lab species might behave when it is in production in the field. And so there's a long way to go to understand that. The costs associated with replacing existing plants with these plants and how that might be done and who's going to pay for the cost of those. That's all sorts of stuff that needs to be taken a look at. But it's really fascinating research that hit the news this week. Something that I will put this link to, and this is actually a fairly large PDF. So what I think is interesting here, I may download the file and insert it as a file. I don't know that I have the URL of this page anymore. I noticed that I have an obfuscated URL. But this is something called the coffee study, the coffee value study, right? And so it's a study of the value distribution in the coffee industry. And it is a study which was done by 4 universities. And what I want to see, and it's something that I really really frustrates me, that the chocolate industry hasn't done the same thing for itself. To the best of my knowledge, there is no like one-to-one comparison with the chocolate industry as they have done here in coffee. They do say that this is primarily focused on the German market, but they, like every great study, they start off, what is the scope? What is the methodology? And they talk about, here is different patterns of consumptions. And then based on this, what are the key conclusions? And then what can't we control for? So the study limitations. And right up front, before you get to the table of contents, what this study is about and what the conclusions are, which I think is a really good way to go approach these kinds of studies, or at least the final reports for these kinds of studies. And then we have a table of contents. And so again, so if you're interested in coffee, I think that one of the things that might be interesting to do, and I haven't done this, is to go take a look at this and see where we can find some parallels between coffee and chocolate, and see if we can find any data around chocolate, which are similar to the data that is presented here, um, the data that are presented here around coffee, to see if we can at least get some sense for um, what the correlations are. Obviously not causation, but what the correlation are. But I am really, really interested. So I'm really, really interested to know where we might be able to find data like this, which is new data, which gives us some help. So for example, we talk about the farmer is making a buck 56 or €1.56, excuse me, per kilo, um, not accounting, the cost of labor, right? With the net income to the farmer of 41 euro cents per kilo. That's an interesting breakdown of this and the farmer costs. So in addition, so on top of this 156 euros per kilo, right? Export costs are 29 kilo, the trader is 26 a kilo, the roaster is 89 a kilo. There's a German tax of $2.19 per kilo. And then on top of that, you add another $1.39 per kilo at retail. On top of that, there's a value added tax, which gets you to coffee costing €8, 6 a kilo. Would love to see a detailed study in chocolate and different parts of the chocolate market. So how is big industrial chocolate different from smaller chocolate? So if you're interested, it's really fascinating to go and take a look at the value distribution in the coffee industry and see how it sort of corresponds with your own experience. If you're a chocolate maker, your own experience, or if you're in cocoa distribution, what your experience is in terms of costs. Right? From there, we're going to go to Confectionery News, which is a source. So I write for one of its competitors, International Confectionery. But what happened? They seem to subscribe. They seem to get notifications to a different set of press releases than I do, and so it's interesting for me to go and compare what it is that International Confectionery is writing about compared with Confectionery News, Confectionery Production, Kennedy's Confections. I mean, these are sources that I look to on a regular basis for my own research and understanding of the background of this. And one of the topics that hit, this was actually the 19th of June, so this is since my last AMA and news, how manufacturers can survive the cocoa crisis. And they're talking about big industrial manufacturers. So it's important to understand that. So one of the things to know about Confectionery News is you need to be really, really careful about their sources. Almost all of the sources that they cite are actually links to Confectionery News articles. They only very rarely cite to an external source. And so finding the primary source is really, really a challenge. What you need to do is you need to cut and paste. And what they do is they have a script that says you can't cut and paste out of pages. So that's a challenge. You actually have to go to the source and grab that. It's much more difficult than it needs to be. But this link is one of the few links that I found in any article which talks about which links to an external source. So how manufacturers can survive is a little different from how manufacturers are surviving, right? But the two may become synonymous very shortly. But what the article suggests, so what can manufacturers do to survive the cocoa crisis? Number one is cut back on the use of cocoa, right? And so many companies are offering customers alternatives to traditional cocoa bean derived products. And it doesn't say how. So this can mean pivoting to items which contain less cocoa, such as white chocolate or milk chocolate, or exploring reformulation options that replace cocoa with some other ingredients. All right. So this is one of the ways you can survive the cocoa crisis is by not using as much. So if you use different ingredients or cheaper ingredients, you can still keep generating a reasonable rate of return on your money. Another way that you can cut down on or can survive the cocoa crisis is look to scientific innovation. And we've talked about some of these. So there is a company, again, this is a link to a confectionery news article in the United States called Circe Bioscience that's looking to commercialize research done out of a Harvard lab, which uses tailored microorganisms, precision fermentation, to be able to take CO2 captured from the air and use electricity to generate lipids, fats in general. Now, I don't understand why they're focusing on cocoa butter as the fat, because the cocoa butter is relatively small amount of the marketplace when compared with palm oil and soybean oil. And palm and soybeans are 66% or contribute to 66% of new deforestation, whereas cocoa only contributes to 7% deforestation. But what they're saying is, can you use this new precision fermentation technology to generate replacement fats, and specifically replacement for cocoa butter? And so this is, again, a link to a confectionery news article. They talk about a company called Kokomoto that came out of stealth to announce its success in cultivating cocoa. They link to this article. Can cultivated cocoa solve the chocolate crisis? It's like cultivating meat, but simpler. It's unclear right now as to whether lab-grown cocoa will actually fit within the standards of identity in the Code of Federal Regulations here in the United States, or within the Codex Alimentarius in the EU and most of the rest of the world. And so this is an article that basically says, what it is that Kokomoto is doing. There's a company in the United States called California Cultured that's doing similar kind of work. I don't think it's directly identical. We have a company in Israel called Celeste Bio. So, and the Finnish confectioner Fazer is also looking to explore similar technology. So, the science geek in me says this is really interesting. However, the humanist in me says we can't give big chocolate too much of an opportunity to have an off-ramp, which will enable them to not accept the responsibility for the abuse in the chocolate value chain that has taken place at least over the last 60 and arguably over the last 400 years. Right? So if we can say to big chocolate, you can sell culture the cacao portion of this, and then you can manufacture using precision fermentation the lipid component of this, then you don't actually need cocoa farmers anymore. And maybe you'll say bye-bye to the cocoa farmers and you'll stop supporting them. And I think that this is a huge ethical dilemma that we as a society face in terms of holding big manufacturers responsible for the damage they've done to the lives and livelihoods of farmers, to the environment, the abuse of the health of people, by consuming products which have been sort of engineered to make them want to eat more and then overconsume. And in the case of chocolate, the sugar in chocolate is known as a contributor to a lot of negative health outcomes. And so, again, something like cultivated cocoa was interesting to me intellectually. And as I say, the humanist in me says we have to really, really be careful about this kind of technology, because it's going to potentially give big chocolate an off-ramp to avoid responsibility. I'm interested in knowing what you think. I mean, are you like me? You think it's an interesting idea intellectually, but you think it would be a horrible idea in practice? Go into the comments wherever you happen to be listening, in the comments and the post on the Chocolate Life, and let me know your thoughts on this, and whether you think it's something that I should write more about. I'm interested in knowing, or follow more closely. Perhaps get some of the people who are associated with this directly and have them on in a future episode. Let me know. I'm happy to do that. It's fascinating to me. It's part of my professional concern, and maybe the people who are watching this will also find it fascinating. Also, again, in confectionery news, we find We have an article about cocoa butter equivalents, CBE, and specialty fats and oil emerge as the sustainable choice for chocolate and confectionery. We have a challenge here in the sense that, number one, cocoa butter equivalents and specialty fats and chocolate in the United States, if you're talking about the recipe for chocolate and you put a CBE or a specialty fat, you can't label it chocolate. So we could be using this for a compound, right? Chocolate, but we could also be using it in a filling, right, or some other component of the chocolate, in which case the use of it is completely legal. But another thing to be really careful of is you do need to pay attention that this is in fact a sponsored article. It's a promotional feature by a company that manufactures these cocoa butter equivalents and specialty fats. And of course, what they're doing is they're playing up, their own particular products which meet the demands. So rule number two, right? Number one is check to see if you link to primary sources, and so you can get at the original sources behind it. And number two is check to make sure who the authors are and find out if they're actually on the staff of the magazine or if this is sponsored content. They're really, really important. So I would expect this to have, in some respects, a high factual aspect to it, but I would expect that a lot of the representations are very, very specific to the products this company manufactures. So take it with a very, very large grain of salt, what it is that you find here. And this company is one of dozens of companies, and every magazine that is a trade magazine in the space is going to be doing similar kinds of things, right? They're going to have, right, promotional, editorial /advertising advertorial in their magazine. So be very careful when you go read through here. Right? So last post from International Confectionery. The reason why I was taking a look at this one, the top 4 premium 10s in confectionery, is I was asked this question by somebody recently. And so I needed to do a whole set of searches around current trends in premium chocolate. And so this became a part of that research. Again, right, this is one of the few times they actually link to a Statista report. And so the link is to Statista as opposed to a link to another International Confectionery article. But they're talking about what are the 4 top trends when it comes to premiumization, as they call it, right, in confectionery in 2024. They talk about putting a modern spin on classic content. Right? So what does that mean? Right? Modern means a lot of things. It could mean tech. So finding some new technology and applying it to the products that you're making. And they do talk about a Hotel Chocolat. They do talk about Kokomoto again, high value cell cultivated cocoa powder. It's in the market. So I'm going to see if I can get to Kokomoto and get samples of it to figure it out. The rest of it is, what does it mean to modernize something, is a really, really interesting, a modern spin on classic confectionery. What does that mean? It could be decoration. It could be, as they're talking about here, a new ingredient, a new way of packaging those ingredients. It's a good question, but putting a modern spin, right? Number 2 is better for you and dietary preferences. So reducing the amount of sugar, reducing the amount of fat, adding a whole lot of dietary fiber, better for you. So, right, does that also mean better for the planet? Not always, but we need to be careful about that, right? So just thinking about what that might mean. So putting a modern spin or on a classic confectionery. So how would you do a modern spin on a pecan turtle? I don't know the answer to that question. I mean, can think about that. I mean, I did answer a similar question like that over in the r/chocolate subreddit. If I can find it, I may put a link to that on it. When somebody was asking about doing a strawberries and cream bar, and I was thinking about cookies and cream and the relationship between cookies and cream and how that would inform my approach to doing a strawberries and cream bar. So coming up with something that might put, using strawberry again rather than a cookie like an Oreo, but taking the tools of a chocolatier and thinking about how that might influence the visual presentation of a bar. So interesting. If I can find that, I'll go and put the link to that as well. But all right, better for you. The third one is tapping into occasion eating. And I think that of all of the things that I read about trends, for me, this is the one which is the most interesting. So if we take, for example, at the way many people consume wine, it might be, meeting with friends or at dinner, right? Or as part of some sort of tasting or other kind of pairing party. We think about, in the UK, especially, you go to the pub after work. It's a place to get together and socialize. I mean, a lot of the specialty coffee, right, growth has been in we go to this specialty coffee shop and it becomes an occasion, right, where I go meet the barista, I go and learn about stuff. I mean, it will be a place where I go to hang out. It will be a place where I have meetings, right? And so a lot of specialty coffee has grown up and has driven the growth around this notion of occasion eating. And we don't really have occasions other than holidays like Halloween and Valentine's Day, right? That are chocolate centric. We don't have rituals around the consumption of chocolate around occasions, right? And that's really, really interesting here when we think about how to be able to drive the sales of chocolate. And so I think that this is a trend, finding an occasion and tapping into that occasion, and then marketing around the occasion. So, one of the things that occurred to me that you might do if I were a chocolate shop, if I were a coffee shop, that what I might do is I might put together a Sunday hot chocolate ritual, right? And try to find some way it would be for two, like high tea, and to put a ritual around. I come in and I'm going to sit and I'm going to have a ritual around hot chocolate that is similar to the one that I may do around high tea. This would be a way to get people in for a brunch or something like that, where maybe they wouldn't normally consider something. And it would be a high value, high ticket item that might be done. The way the hot chocolate is prepared and presented could be very, very different from a normal presentation and a normal service, but you get the idea. That's a way to turn tapping into occasion eating into something that you can do at retail. And then you might have products which would enable people to do this at home, replicate the experience for themselves. Very, very cool. And it's actually one of the successes, I think, of Max Brenner, is that they turned showing up at the Max Brenner into a special occasion where you were able to get experiences that you weren't able to get other places. So think about occasion eating as a way of growing your business. And then finally, perfecting the premium package. This is a trend. What you want to do is you want to say, here is chocolate and here is an experience which is a premium. So it is the luxury box. It is the unboxing experience. The challenge that I find here is that sometimes the packaging and the unboxing experience is actually more interesting than the chocolate itself inside. And so if you're going to go with a premium trend by upscaling your packaging, you need to make sure that whatever is inside actually manages the expectations that are set up by the outside. Because for me, this is one of the biggest fails, right? Right. I look at a package and I look at the way it's done and I think about opening it up and all the elements of it and what I'm going through in order to be able to get the product inside. And if the product inside is meh, or it doesn't match the expectations right, that have been set by the packaging, I am immediately going, yeah, this is a nice idea, but right, they need to take a work on it. They need to work on the execution of the product inside to match the execution of the packaging. Really, really important thing to consider. For the last thing I want to do for today's news and AMA, apparently nobody has questions about chocolate today, is I want to talk about some things that have been presented around World Chocolate Day as interesting kinds of things that people might be interested in doing with chocolate. And this one is clickbaity, and it comes from a source in the UK. And it says that um, an internet bloggers, vlogger, so vlogger, probably TikTok then, um, has got this egg, has got this chocolate pudding, but the chocolate pudding is made with scrambled eggs. So it's just really, really simple. It's scrambled eggs, cocoa powder, and it is also got a sweetener, in this case honey, as well as some milk. And if I were to think about a traditional sort of like pot de creme or other kind of chocolate pudding, one of the challenge, or egg-based chocolate pudding, one of the challenges you have is cooking the eggs properly and then making sure that they don't scramble, right? Because if you get the eggs a little bit too hot, the proteins are going to start to coagulate, and you have an issue. And what this person has said, just embrace the fact that you've got this issue associated with the the eggs the eggs potentially curdling, and just scramble them in the first place, right? So I'm going to put a link to this. There is a video which talks about how to make this scrambled egg. I'm not going to play it again. And what they say is the secret to this is put it in a blender. So scramble the eggs, add some cocoa powder, add the honey, add some milk. It's in a blender, and that by blending it, you're going to puree all the scrambledness in with all the other ingredients, and you're going to end up with something that is silky smooth, right? You're going to be introducing air into it, so you're going to have some, in ice cream terms, overrun. I can imagine this working incredibly well, right? High protein, depending on the sweetener, right, you're using. I mean, this could be a really, really cool. You could use a non-dairy milk if you wanted to do this. So, I mean, the internet says can't handle this. I don't agree with this at all. I think this is a really, really cool idea, right? And now that I found it, I have all the ingredients sitting in my cupboard, and I'm going to try it sometime in the next day or so, or over the weekend, and I'll let everybody know. Right. So here is something for World Chocolate Day. It's not a recipe, but if you're a big Krispy Kreme fan and you like chocolate glazed donuts, I didn't know that Krispy Kreme doesn't offer chocolate glazed donuts year round, but apparently they don't. And they brought them back this weekend only. And they may not be available everywhere, but for World Chocolate Day, right, Krispy Kreme is offering chocolate glazed donuts. If that's the way you like to consume your donuts. Now, this was an interesting one for me, and it came up when I was going and looking at that chocolate festival, which was in the Philippines. It's this weekend in Manila, right? But adobo chocolate is among the must-try foods at this Philippine celebration of World Chocolate Day. And I was going, wow, this is interesting. What are the ingredients? So there is a company in the Philippines that I don't know. Oh, I do know, called Theo and Philo. They do great work, but they've got an adobo bar, which is got some really, really interesting ingredients. And I'll put the link to this in today's post, and you can go and look at the ingredients. But this is a really, really good example of connecting, which is unique to your local cuisine, doing something that not only your local customer base will go, I know exactly what my flavor expectation of this is going to be, and it's a celebration of the local food culture, but it's something that's going to pique the interest of international customers who are interested in expanding their exploration, their food horizons and their flavor horizons and things. And so I want to put it in there, and just to let everybody know, right, about what this is and what some of the ingredients are. And then one of the things that this suggests, right, as a follow-up bit of research, is what are the differences between Filipino adobo, right, and the adobo that I would find in more traditionally Hispanic cuisines. So what are the adaptations that have been made for Filipino ingredients? Although there's a huge Spanish influence in Philippine culture, the Filipinos have a history of taking things and making them uniquely their own. So this is, I think, a great way to spend World Chocolate Day, is in these explorations, learning this new stuff about world. How has chocolate, which is a Native American thing, influenced world culture, right? And how has world food culture, right, influenced chocolate? I mean, it's a great way to explore the day. Now, there are things, I think there are some less interesting ways to explore the day. This is one that I found looking at is that Nissan Cup Noodles is offering a campfire s'mores of a traditional sort of, ramen cup. So I'm not entirely sure what I think about that. So it's ramen noodles in a chocolate sauce with artificial flavors and little marshmallows. Um, the 4-year-old in me says maybe. The adult in me says not a chance. But let me know. I mean, you think, am I crazy that you think the idea of having a limited edition campfire s'mores noodles? Now, I can imagine that, like we haven't had any rain here in Arizona for a while. And so, if I can't, have an open fire if I'm going camping, and I wouldn't be able to toast marshmallows over an open fire, which is the fun of making s'mores. Um, but if I had a little gas stove and I could boil water, could I put that over my campfire s'mores cup of noodles and have the flavor experience of s'mores? I don't know. Let me know what you think about it. Again, as I say, the young boy in me says that might be something worth trying. And the adult in me says not a chance. But let me know what you think. And then last for this edition is going back to the World Chocolate Day theme. This is, I'm not sure how to pronounce Hygge, Hygge. I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's a website and there's a collection of just random facts. When is World Chocolate Day? Well, it's always on July 7th. But if I'm interested in knowing what day of the week going forward for the next half dozen years, I can figure that out. It also doesn't give any more information about when or why it started or how important it is. But this is where I think that, again, completely random post, I understand it, is they actually did a bit of research into the popularity of World Chocolate Day hashtags on sites like Instagram, and sort of, so World Chocolate Day and then World Chocolate Day 2020 or 2021 or 2022. So we can say, how popular these things are. And so maybe what you'd want to do as part of your social media effort in focusing on World Chocolate Day would be to go take a look at some of these hashtags that people have been used, ideas for story ideas around it, specific hashtags that could be used to drive engagement. And then maybe it's just World Chocolate Day quotes. So quotes about chocolate for World Chocolate Day that could go into memes or other things like that for your social media. And quotes from Dave Barry. I mean, my therapist told me the way to achieve true inner peace is to finish what I start. So far today, I finished 2 bags of M&Ms and a chocolate cake, and I feel better already. Right? So I don't know what you think about that, but it is. But I think that this notion of, from a marketing perspective, how do I take an event like World Chocolate Day and use it to drive awareness and understanding of my chocolate business is not a bad thing to consider, right? And with that, I'm at the end of all of the posts that I had wanted to talk about today. And to remind everybody, this is the homepage of The Chocolate Life. You can go there now. For every single episode of Pod Safe Chocolate, there is a post, right? And I have not put the links that I've talked about today in today's post. Come back in an hour or so, and you'll find the links in this episode, where it says also in this episode. You'll find the links, right, that I talked about today. So you can go back and refer to any of these things in the future. And to end with 2 thoughts. The first one of which is this episode of Pod Safe Chocolate, like every episode, is supported by members of the Chocolate Life. So go to the Chocolate Life, become a member, and help the community grow and keep the lights on here. Your support is greatly appreciated. And then to end, as I always end, by saying, and as I always end with saying, if you're working with chocolate and you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong. Ciao, everybody. And one final reminder, this coming Tuesday, I'm going to be interviewing David Nilsson of the Bean to Barstool podcast. I did an episode with David, which was aired audio only last Tuesday. We're doing a follow episode this coming Tuesday here on Pod Safe Chocolate around the meaning of craft chocolate, pairing chocolate and beer, pairing beer and chocolate. It's going to be a really fascinating episode that I hope you join me this coming Tuesday. And again, if you're working with chocolate, you're not having fun, do it. If you're working with chocolate and you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong. Have a great weekend, everybody. Ciao.